Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Arden, and today we're talking about DC's Death Metal number three, Dark Knight's Death Metal number three. I, I screwed up the title there, but you get what I'm saying. Written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo, inks by Jonathan Glapian, colors by FCO Placencia. uh, Oh, and Tom Napolitano doing lettering, which really shouldn't be under uh, appreciated because there's so many different characters at death metal. Each, well, not each, but so many having their own distinct type of dialogue and speech bubbles that the letterer really does a good job in this story. Um, and Napolitano's work shouldn't be underestimated in this story, in this series, I should say. Um, on the whole, spoiler free, Dark Knight's number three is definitely the weakest of the three issues of this series to come out yet. Um, but on the whole, maintains the fun and energy of Dark Knight so far. It has a lot of little great details and moments that preserve it uh, from being like bad. And I still recommend it. There's just a pretty important idea or like decision that I think undermines the entire thing. And I can't really get into that too much without getting to spoilers, but I will say this is the first sign of death metal kind of taking a step backwards, in my opinion. And, well, we'll have to just get into spoiler territory beyond that. So, we open on our heroes, I guess Harley Quinn, Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, who is currently acting as a shield for Wonder Woman, Batman, all on New Apokolips. They encounter these parademon robins, which are awesome. And so far, everything's just everything I love about death metal's on full display here. We finally see where Superman's been in all of this, and he's hooked up to some sort of crazy anti-life machine that is draining his powers, and it's some sort of trap designed forcibly by Mr. Miracle, while this dark side version of Batman extracted it out of the new god's mind. Again, really cool Batman themed take on Apokolips. Great stuff as our heroes emerge and confront the dark side Batman and his parademon Robins. That's just fun. Darkseid Batman pulls out the gun that Darkseid used on Batman during the final crisis and shoots it at Superman, but Batman gets in the way and apparently dies. But then Superman reveals he still has powers, and like I don't know, Batman uses his black ring to survive it, kind of. But there's clearly something more going on with Superman and Batman, and they both just agree to sort of ignore whatever that is just for the sake of helping Wonder Woman. And it's still very much her fight. Meanwhile, Lobo is on some sort of imaginary cartoon realm, slaughtering people and on some sort of warpath. It's a fun page. And then we cut back to the Justice Society, Wally West and Barry Allen, all in their little secret crypt of heroes. And the Robin King emerges. We now know a lot more about, and I can really suddenly appreciate his presence there. So it leaves me definitely liking that Legends of the Dark Knight book a lot more. But he says the Darkest Knight is on his way, and he's after Wally West's Dr. Manhattan powers. So they just go off running, but there's not a lot left in the Speed Force. And the Darkest Knight makes it clear that once they stop running, he's going to catch him. Our heroes then find where the book kind of loses me a little bit. All of the other DC heroes, like the Green Lanterns, Titans, members of the Justice League, all being just sort of held in a prison, apparently fine and perfectly normal. Um, and that's kind of where we leave things. They sort of update us on everything, how Perpetua's using this new world to draw energy, and they want to create this anti-crisis, and meanwhile they're running from the Darkest Night, all the stuff that's been going on. And then they say it all comes down to little Jaro, the son of Starro, who Batman raised in a jar, and has a nice little touching moment with Batman. And they all agree to work together to stop this, including a very decayed and damaged Jonah Hex, who like exploded at the beginning of this book. Uh, Meanwhile, we learned Lobo managed to retrieve some sort of important box on behalf of his employer, who's none other than Lex Luthor. So, on the whole, going over this story, aside from one weak part, I really do like this thing, and it maintains what I enjoy about this story. It's not very deep or whatever, but it's fun, and there's nothing wrong with fun. People have been kind of writing it off as, oh, it's just Mad Max style, like imagery in the world of DC, but it's not really that. It's far more creative than that. And Mad Max is just kind of going after a larger style of like this like metal animation from back in the day that I feel this story is very specifically evoking from, and kind of using it to give DC its own spin, and I enjoy that. I really like the part with the Dark Side Batman. I like we get a couple of cool images early on of a Brainiac style Batman, one that's almost like a Silver Surfer, and another one that's a Red Lantern. That stuff is pretty cool to me. And those aspects of death metal are being played up by DC. I noticed in some of the solicitations going forward, it seems like there's a lot more tie-ins being floated around these days, and that's pretty awesome on the whole. So, the part that bothers me, or at least I think weakens this whole concept, is all of the other superheroes just being fine. It made sense for Barry Allen to have been unchanged in all of this, same with Wally West. The JSA were crazy aged up. The others, I feel like they should have been tortured on New Apokolips, transformed like the Trinity was, and it feels creatively flat to just have them all held in a box somewhere on New Apokolips this whole time, ready to be part of a normal generic fight. I would have much rathered either them all being like creatively different, but that is a lot of work, or for the story just to focus on the characters we had at the beginning, and maybe Superman as an addition, because that had been shown long ahead of all of this. Like, if we just had a story with Wonder Woman's this weird emancipated Swamp Thing, emaciated Swamp Thing, I should say, Harley Quinn and Batman, that would have been a fun story on the whole. Instead, we kind of get something that isn't quite living up to the rest of the energy of death metal, and it feels like, I don't know, that feels a little cheap to me. It would have been cool to do that, like to have everyone having. I think the better compromise, because designing a new look for all of these heroes that show up in this story, like near the end, would have been a lot of work. But if they were all just like horribly afflicted on New Apokolips, I think that would have been more in line with the rest of this event. I also like how Lex Luthor's coming back, and how he's probably going to make some big play and posit some sort of revenge against the Darkest Knight, or the Batman, or what was the Batman Who Laughs. But beyond that, I don't know. I'm not all that sold on this particular book otherwise. I still think that this will be fun for what it is. It's interesting enough on its own, and it's introducing cool enough things in terms of like all these different tie-ins, all of these cool concepts that can kind of either be explored in the future or in these tie-ins and stuff. It even like at the end of last issue got this cool like weird rocket ship made up of like parts to resemble Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman combined, and that thing's just crashed on New Apokolips right at the start of this story. And I like that sort of energy where we're just throwing ideas out. And I guess it's because of that pace of ideas and creativity, I was a little disappointed to just be suddenly reality checked and brought back to normal DC world, which we hadn't even had a flicker of in this book. And you know what? I had been getting my taste of in other series like the Justice League Core series, and so on and so forth. So on the whole, I think I'd recommend it, but I will throw some caution there that the story is starting to waver a little bit, And I really do think we're kind of heading to some sort of ending. But I'm also finding that matters less and less as we're getting more tie-ins, which is pretty unique for an event. But because this setting's so interesting and because all these characters are being thrown around that I still think are really cool, the Dark Knights are even back from Metal and stuff like that. These are all things that can be cool villains going forward and random stories and other ideas, which might be very useful, especially as DC's market and plans are very much up in the air right now. So, yeah, it's an interesting book and definitely weighed down by all that other stuff going on in DC, which I think maybe we'll reserve for another time to talk about. That seems better at the moment. So, yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching my reviews. That officially catches us up to next week's comics, which come out tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure what I'm pulling because I've lost track at this point. But I'm sure it'll be a fun collection of comics, so stay tuned for that. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for some more reviews as I work on some other stuff in the background, which I promise is happening. I had a rough couple of weeks, but that's over now, and I can kind of focus a little more on the channel again, which is nice, and hopefully things are getting a little bit more back to normal for Joey too, because I understand they haven't been. I mean, they haven't been for anyone. So we thank you all for your patience as we figure out things in the midst of a pandemic. But it's been fun doing these reviews, and that's been a good holdover at a time when I really haven't had a lot of time to work on other stuff. So that's been nice. And it's been a great way to kind of keep an active sort of presence in the comics as we go along, which is great. So thanks again, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow here on Comic Island.